marketing leader, Korn Ferry, Mr. Shashidhar Ambapudi, Senior Manager HR and India, DEIB leader, Pegasystems. In today's dynamic and rapidly changing business landscape, effective management goes beyond traditional top-down approaches. Empowering management is a contemporary leadership philosophy that recognizes the potential of employee and aims to unleash their capabilities, creativity, and enthusiasm. It is about granting autonomy, responsibility, and decision-making authority to individuals at all levels of an organization, fostering a culture of trust, innovation, and collaboration. Our esteemed panelists would share their views on this insightful topic, empowering management. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots. To know more about HRAI and its event, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We'll be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all the participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege of introducing our moderator for the session, Mr. Shashidhar Ambapudi, Senior Manager, HR and India DEIB leader, Pegasystems. Shashidhar comes with close to 15 years of experience with careers in finance and now in HR. His journey has been through audits, IT service, and product organizations. In his current role, he plays Senior Manager HRBP and also leads the DEIB function at Pegasystems. Beyond work, he is certified yoga instructor and budding ICF certified professional coach. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Without wasting much time, we'll hand over the platform to Mr. Shashi. Over to you, Shashi.
Peterson, thank you so much. That was humbling. Everyone, thanks for making time and getting into the session. A very important topic is underway. I know Peterson has given a bit of introduction. I was just driving today to office and I was also reminiscing on the topic itself and how my own experience has been. To me, it's all about three different A's, right? Empowering management is autonomy, authority, leading to accountability. That to me has been my personal journey. But we have with us experts from the industry cutting across years of experience, locations, as well as various sectors. And we're going to hear from them today. I will take the privilege to actually give a little bit more introduction about our panelists today. That's okay. All right. I would start off with Harini, pharmacist turned leader. She comes with close to 25 years of experience in leveraging people potential for business excellence. I really love the way, it really sounds too. So she's a behavioral scientist and has been an influencer for both the corporate and the academia. So currently she's a partner with Semco Style Institute India and also visiting faculty at Premier B Schools. We shall gain from your rich insights, Harini. Thanks for joining in.
My pleasure.
We also have Konika with us. She's the head of professional search and regional market leader for Korn Ferry India. She is responsible for developing and growing the search practices across sectors through trial acquisition, engagement, and delivery. For her contributions, she has received several awards, including the Exceptional Women Leader for the World Economic Forum. That's just awesome. We are glad to have you here on the panel, Konika.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine and look forward to the discussion.
Great. Last, we do have Dr. Soumya. She's VP Corporate Strategy and HR, Gold Star Jewelry Private Limited. She comes with over 20 years of corporate experience in the field of sales, marketing, strategy, and HR. She carries deep expertise in various markets, especially in the field of luxury products, jewelry, and few others. She's also been a visiting faculty at several institutions in our country and is also an empaneled professor at the IIM. We look forward to share and gain more from your expertise. Thank you so much, Dr. Soumya.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over. Thank you.
Wonderful. And to the lovely audience out there, here is what we'll do. We'll get into a lot of conversation with all the esteemed panelists we have today. Plus, we are going to keep the chat open so that any questions, anytime throughout the session, just feel free to punch in. and I'll be more than happy to bake it into what I'm anyway asking. All right. So with that, shall we get started, everyone? Okay, great. I would like your initial remarks on the subject. And before that, a bit of context from my end as well, right? Nowadays, when we imagine our world of today, post-COVID, new org structures are emerging, new expectations between employers and employees, right? New styles of leadership are emerging. A lot of research into post-COVID organizational design is underway. In all this, while looking at fundamental human needs, which haven't quite evolved as rapidly, right? The topic of empowering management, is it a fad or is it really a fundamental shift? If you could go around the table and really give your initial thoughts on that, and we'll start off with Harini, please.
Hello and a very good afternoon to everyone. My initial thoughts on the topic for today, is it a fad or a fundamental shift? It's definitely not a fad. I would say it's a fundamental shift. And the shift is the whole reason is the definition of work itself, the paradigm of work itself has gone through a shift. Gone are the days of Frederick Taylor, 110 plus year old theory, where he talks of scientific people management, where decision-making power rests with the few in the ivory tower. And now, when you're talking of Industry 5.0, in the digital age, information age, it is irrelevant to say that decision-making power can be only with a few sitting in the ivory tower, because they are so far away from reality. And decision actually has to be taken on the ground, because being on the ground is being very close to where your people, your stakeholders are. So definitely, empowering people to take decisions is a fundamental shift. And organizations that still think it's a fad are still living in the dark ages. That's my 2 cents on it. Back to you, Shashi.
Very powerful, Harini. Thank you so much. Okay, Konika, over to you, please.
So I think very interesting, and I think I'll extend a little bit from what Harini just mentioned. Today, see, we are in a world which is extremely dynamic. Every day, like Harini said, if people are not willing to accept that there are shifts happening and empowerment is here to stay, it's a problem that they have. The way we look at empowerment, and there's a lot of papers you'll find that Korn Ferry has published on this as well, is talking about the very fact that today you are talking about digitization, you're talking about virtual workplaces, you're talking about employee engagement happening in a different level. You need to have a certain level of connect with employees, which is not the traditional way. Now, how does this happen? This happens only through empowerment. So it is, like we were discussing, it's not really an HR. This is a business strategy. This is a business decision. It's a phenomenal and a fundamental shift in the way the work is happening. You mentioned about organizational hierarchies. I think hierarchies are here to go. Those hierarchies don't exist anymore. And that's empowerment. How is it that power is actually given? And power has many definitions. We'll talk more about it throughout the conversation, is to the last mile connect. So it's no longer the top management, which is empowered today. Everybody is, and that's how organizations are ticking.
Wonderful, wonderful. There are at least 5-6 questions on top of my mind with just the opening remarks, but let me go through it. Dr. Soumya, over to you, please.
So wonderfully said by both the ladies and you in setting up the context. What I can add is a small quote that was given by Steve Jobs, So wherein we are today leveraging heavily on technologies, which are tools. So what he said is, tools are just tools. They may work or they may not. You may choose to trust on whatever the tools are throwing back at you, which is in form of data. But it is the people on who you actually need to put your trust on. And when you lean on, your people, that's the right way to lead on. That's what I would say. So empowering people, empowering organizations are those organizations which create this beautiful symphony of technology, people skills, management, and then create that intent and intellectual capabilities within the system, and that creates an empowered individual. These are my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Lean on to lead on. Wow. Okay, great. I want to deep dive on that, right? Any specific examples in your own career that you would have seen
Yeah,
where it
so,
really brings leadership? Yeah, go ahead.
So what I would say is that, see, we are from gems and jewelry industry. So as you would say, and as you would have heard, that heere ki parab to johri hi jane. So when it comes to the price of the diamonds, it is something which is a very well, I would say, a very, very veiled environment and an ecosystem. So we do have standardized systems, but at times what happens is when you are in such a competitive market, that's where we're seeing that if an employee, especially your sales team, is not given that empowerment to give or pass on certain price leverages to the consumers or to the customers or to the client base, you tend to lose the market share. And coming from gems and jewelry industry, which is a very, so as to say, an archaic industry, often very misunderstood industry, this is something that the industry is working greatly on. Second is, while the world was still waking up to the D&I initiatives, we have gone far ahead, and we will discuss it in, further details. And this industry is, based on trust. So in the olden times in Antwerp, the businesses were done, unke haath ke upar they would just put a handkerchief and they would just do this, and this movement. And with the tap of the hand, they would say what would be the price of the diamond. There was nothing written. There was nothing spoken. There were no handwritten notes that were taken back as a referral point. So imagine the empowered business ecosystem that was already existent. And then it came to all of us where trust was very important. Now, why do we go back to our own jewelers? It's only for that trust. If that jeweler has said, well, this is this carat of gold and this carat of diamond, then you would go back to that person always. And we have jewelers who have been our, I would say, generational jewelers to us. So I have seen multiple examples. We will discuss about it as we move further. But when you have a trust created in an ecosystem, then I've seen that employees are more open to communication, more open to ideas. They are the ones who are creating the subtle innovations and design innovations also for you. We have guards, sitting, and they were just doodling something, and I just chanced to see that what is she doing, and she drew beautifully. They were just doodles, and she drew something very beautiful. And from her being sitting in a guard's position, we brought her to the design team, and she's flourishing very well. Wow. So that's the kind of things that we do.
Quite an example there. Wow. Wow. We'll come back on the D&I piece. I really my attention, considering that's one of the roles I play. But it all sounds really good, right? More innovation, more empowerment, more trust. Then question to maybe Konika, to you, right? Why is this not already happening, or do you think it is happening rampantly? What are the barriers if it's not already happening? Your views.
So, see, it's probably management and organizations want to do this. They want to implement it. They want to create a empowered organization culture. Let me put it like that. But there is not enough being done to create that kind of an ecosystem today. And obviously, there are many challenges. It's not that there aren't challenges, and there are various ways in which you can overcome some of those challenges as well. And I'll try and give you some examples of that as well. In terms of how Korn Ferry is doing it. I will not talk about clients. It's about us, and we learned different ways of doing things. And it was also thanks to the change in the environment today, which is there. So first of all, there is a resistance to change itself. What is important in this case is, there has to be a communication which is open. I think talking about communication, explaining what is the change that is going to come in the organization, because this is a top-driven approach. This is not something that anybody can decide. I want to start working around it, this way. So it can't be. So it is a top-driven approach. Whether you're having organization webinars or town halls, etc. I think it has to be spoken about. What are we doing? Give examples. Give live case studies. So like I was telling you, we used to have a 5x25 concept where the global leaders, and I'm not talking about the top management, I'm talking about people running practices, they would come together, they design the initiatives of how can the business work better. Especially during the time of COVID, how can we do things differently? Can we offer different solutions? And at that time, the roles became very agile in terms of who's doing what. And thanks to that, there were so many other avenues. Like one example that Soumya gave right now, there were so many where people actually figured out there were different paths and they were doing better things at, other areas. So for example, a search consultants actually moved into consulting because we figured that, that person is, probably gifted, comes with the background, but is also gifted and very good at it, from a talent management perspective and not just acquisition. So, so that's there. First of all, you have to create that environment and trust. Till the time you don't have a trust worthy organization, employees don't trust each other, management doesn't trust each other, people will never feel empowered. Because what it leads to is the fear of failure. So that's the other challenge, the third challenge that you face. There's a fear of failure. So, so it's just, a thought, and we do it. I do it with the team. Instead of saying that I have made a mistake and I failed at doing something, can we say, what was my lesson learned and how do I improve on it? It is the lens with which we are viewing it. Now, what do you do when these kind of things happen? What you do is, number one, you cultivate innovation. There are no barriers or fear in terms of if I don't achieve this, what happens if I fail? So here they know that I have a soft landing. I know there is somebody taking my back. There is a trust in me. It by default creates a sense of responsibility that, I have to do what I have been given as a task or as an assignment which is there. What also happens is, Sasi and the audience, what we have figured out during our assessments is a lot of people or managers lack the skills and training on how to equip employees, with increased responsibility. Simply going and saying, hey, you're the project leader and you have to run this project is not enough. Are you training employees enough? Are you having workshops? Are you, even teaching how people should communicate more effectively? Time management, if you're giving the responsibility, people have other responsibilities to kind of work around on. Are you empowering them in that sense and giving them the required tools also and training, which is probably most undermined today? They think, we've assigned a task and the person should be able to do it because in our view, we've empowered the individual. But that's not really true empowerment. How are you supporting that empowerment? That is very, very important. Also, like what I mentioned earlier, is there is inadequate communication. What is the expectation? Create an open dialogue. There should be active listening. Are there feedback processes in place? What's working? What's not working? We try to create a new role in the system because we felt that, the organization's expectation and client expectations are changing. Now that role was never done for with in the organization, and there's a certain way in which the search is done. It's extremely research oriented in that sense, and you need to have capability in the field that you are working in, for that matter. Now, we obviously, assign that role, for example, to the individual, but the person we figured was not sure in terms of how to get work done from the other team members, because the person moved from an individual contributor to a team leader role. Now, what do you do? Number one, communicate effectively, even to the team members, what is expected from them, what is expected out of the team leader, what will be the transition process. If things are not working out with periodic checks, how do we make it happen for the individual or the team so that there's cohesiveness, there's camaraderie, and you're getting the right productivity out from them as well. So that's an important one. And that's where the inconsistent leadership support also comes in. That's the other barrier that you find very, very often. And that's why very strongly I feel it's a very top-driven thing. So the top management has to demonstrate that kind of culture. Where they are in turn empowering their business leaders, and the business leaders in turn their team to be able to do this. Otherwise, you've seen enough and more times people use the word, so-and-so is a micromanager. It's not about micromanagement. If you've empowered, then trust the individual with the assignment, keep periodic checks in place. Otherwise, if you're going to review every day and breathe down somebody's neck, how's the person supposed to learn? And let them be clear, make some faults, but you should hold their back and guide them with the right tools to really work around it. So honestly speaking, if I have to kind of summarize all these barriers, etc., that I've kind of spoken about, what is very, very important is to have a very holistic approach when you're talking about empowerment. This will involve communication, it will involve training, this will involve, very importantly, underline and bold cultural reinforcement. It's a mind shift change that we are trying to talk about over here. And then it's a gradual and a consistent change. So you have to support it and be patient for it. It's not that it'll make a difference really tomorrow. So I think that's what I would like to add on. It's a huge topic, much debated about today in terms of that, but that's something that experience as well as our research has picked up.
Right, wonderful, very elaborate. Quite a few details you have given. I'm staying longer at the tone at the top piece that you mentioned, which is leadership induced top-down behavior, and people actually role model their leaders, and that gets into the culture of the organization. Harini, that's where I'd like to pick up your thoughts on, right? Conceptually, we are clear by now. It is important. There are benefits. It takes effort. It's not proactively. If not done, it won't automatically get into a state, right? So in your experience, have you seen leadership styles, any specific examples are appreciated, of course, on what they did differently, if there are any certain situations, regular reaction versus a leader who thinks empowerment? How would they react? Any such examples?
Yeah, there are quite a few, but because we have to keep it really, really brief, and then I want to drive home the point, I'll take an example which is which is actually may sound a little radical, but it makes a lot of sense. So Semco Style Institute, as you know, we actually speak about and we implement the philosophy which was brought out by Ricardo Semler. Now, Ricardo Semler did everything from practice to theory. And that's exactly why I want to bring that example here of empowerment. So typically, a lot of these consulting pieces, frameworks, models, they evolve from theory to practice. But what Ricardo did was practice to theory. Therefore, I want to quote what he did as a radical example. So 40 years back, when he actually started doing experiments on the shop floor of his family managed business, a manufacturing business, at a time when it was believed that people on the shop floor are not capable of taking business decisions, right? He did a very successful experiment of building the muscle for decision making so that they feel empowered and they feel that they're able to take business decisions. So one of the simplest things he did to build that muscle was, when it was time to have the factory repainted, it was traditionally the admin department who would come and say that, okay, this should be the color of the factory walls. So he said, this is a decision which is not severely consequential. So let's start building the muscle. Let's let people take this decision. So let's go back to the shop floor and ask them what would be the color that you would want to paint the walls with. Believe it or not, he was faced with a lot of criticism, and there were a lot of naysayers, and they said, how can you ask them to do it? What if they paint the walls black? Right? So his question was, why do we as leaders assume that people do not know what is good for them, what is good for the business? They are going to be working there. So they are going to take the right decision as to what should be the color of the walls. They're going to make it lively and bright for them to work in. So they may not choose black, for all you know. So after a lot of convincing, he went back and allowed the workers to decide, and they came up with some bright, sunny yellow color on the walls, which made the ambience really, really suitable for increased productivity. So what I'm trying to say here is, this is a classic example. It's something that really happened. It's quoted beautifully in the book Maverick. And it's not just an anecdote. Big changes. We're talking about a mindset change. We're talking about a shift in the mindset. We're talking about a paradigm shift in the way leaders are enabling others, empowering the teams to take decisions. You suddenly give them big business decisions to take. What will eventually happen is people may start feeling a little worried that, why is the leader stepping back today? Why is the leader suddenly asking me to take decisions? What will be the consequences? The fear of failure will be really very high. So, the change has to be gradual, as Kanika said. And if the change has to be gradual, start small and give these small decision-making chances to your teams. And when you see them doing a good job, slowly keep increasing their boundaries and let them take bigger decisions. Now, when you start small and you also tell them, like one of my very old mentors a few decades ago, when I started my career, he used to keep telling me and he used to keep demonstrating. And whenever I used to go back and have to do something, he used to say, go ahead, do it. Success is yours, failure is mine. And that's it. That one mantra made me take up decisions and do it. So start small and be very consistent as a leader, and let people know that whatever they do, it, success is theirs and failure is the leader's, right? So yeah, start small with small decisions, applaud them for what they have done. And it starts with the trust that people can take the right decisions, because it's ultimately, we are all hiring adults at the workplace. So if people can take decisions in their personal lives about whom to get married to, when to get married, when to buy a house, what kind of house to buy, what kind of car to buy, when to start a family, whom do we vote in power to run our country, why can't they take decisions for the business? So it's the assumption. So I think the first thing is to start with an assumption that people are capable of taking decisions. And the second thing is to start small, let them take small decisions till they find their own ground. Yeah. Applaud them for the good work that they've done, and keep giving them more and more information, be transparent, so that they're able to take bigger decisions.
Lovely, lovely. Wow, this is so good. You just took my thought out and put it out there anyway. I was about to say that, in our life, in our personal lives, there's so many decisions we take. We build families, we are accountable. People look up to us. We have seniors, juniors. But out here, sometimes when we come to organizations, one of the things we hear is, oh, I'm not given chance to attend the meeting because they don't think I'm ready, kind of thing, right? So try, test, fail, but then you will rise. I really like that.
Yeah, and one more thing, it's not so much about coaching leaders and managers to empower people. Yeah, that will happen. But then we are talking about a revolution. Now, how do you make that revolution of change, of empowerment happen in an organization is look at the construct of the organization. Look at the organizational design. Like there are, so traditional organization structures have built-in vertical power distances and also horizontal power distances. Now, as Kanika was listing out barriers, I was thinking of, apart from individuals being barriers and having to coach them, it's also important for us to look at the organizational structure itself as a barrier. If I have something to get across, if I have to take a decision, if it has to go to multiple departments for approvals, where is the empowerment? Even if my manager is empowering me, if the organization structure doesn't permit me to take that decision, then there is something that's terribly wrong. So I think organizational design, the way organizations are structured, the power distance between departments, what I call as horizontal power distance itself, could be a very big barrier. So that's something to keep in mind as we talk of empowerment.
Keep in mind, yes. And especially true as organizations grow, right? Where process becomes more important. You see some of these red tapeisms, etc. Good topic to debate on. Actually, the name of the book that you mentioned, if you could just put it in the chat, it would be good for our audience.
Sure. There are two books, in fact, and both are very interesting reads. I'll put it there.
Superb. Open question to all three of you, in fact, right? Any particular frameworks that you can refer, like the one, Harini, you mentioned, right? Anything that you think people should be educated from a theory standpoint and set out to implement? Please feel free to raise that out. Any research material, particular framework or a methodology to follow, or a book to read on this topic? It'll be really good to augment it beyond the session as well. But if you have on top of the mind, please take a few seconds and just voice it out here.
So in fact, I think what I'll just mention is that there is this whole Korn Ferry Advanced Leadership page, which is there on LinkedIn and otherwise. And, anybody who registers, just, search what topic you want. There are enough and more white papers on it. In fact, I think there's this whole paper on power shift, which happened, which, we spoke about that today. It is not about power is not in the hands of the top management. And that's why when you started and I opened into Harini's point, I said, structures have gone. They are here to go. There are no structures today. Organizations become very flexible, and they have to, because that's how, the power and is going to flow in the organization. So, but in case, people are interested, I can do that. I'll just try and see. I can probably put that link on the chat as well.
Okay. Sure, that will be good. So I'll move on now. And I'm trying to deep dive into what every individual in an organization faces, which is pretty much all the regular life cycle items, right? Like performance management, leadership, learning, etc. How will those look like if we have a culture which is very empowering, right? So the talent life cycle items and how an individual experiences it, what will they experience differently? And no, leadership development, in case Konika, you would like to talk on it since you mentioned that already. Yeah.
So, it's honestly, these are all very broad topics for that matter for discussion. And sometimes it becomes hard in terms of even, to fathom in terms of how the theoretical shift happens into reality. But to your point, when you're talking about an empowered, maybe leadership development kind of an approach or a leadership style approach, actually the way to look at it is, and when you're talking about a talent life cycle, typically, which is there are many touch points. So end is not the beginning. Okay, so the very fact on how today organizations are attracting people inside the organization itself has to start looking differently. It's not the typical way of just sending a JD, giving a call, come interview. Doesn't work like that today. It'll be, if today, even if you're talking about a role, for example, to an external person, and I'm starting right from like the beginning, when you're talking about this leadership change, and which at least, I know I kind of talk a lot about with clients, is in terms of showcasing how this individual will actually work. What is that empowerment this person will have? What is expected out of it very clearly in terms of roles and responsibilities. That's number one, and which people think is a very small aspect. But if you don't see it, that means it's not built into the fabric of the organization. And it could be a big turnoff in today's time. That in terms of how is it that, you have opportunity, let's say, if you're in a global role today, or you're going to get into a global role, the very fact that we are talking in that discussion when we are attracting a particular person to come and join us is that you're going to be part of operational teams which are going to span across geographies. There is an autonomy in decision making. This is how this decision making works in the organization. People don't talk about all of this. It's important to talk about these things, and that's where you start creating a culture, and that leader in turn is going to pass on to the rest of the team members, really, which is there. Okay. and talking about this, empowering people, defining it in the core value system of the organization. We put vision and values and everything, but I think even that needs to shift today, because the world that we are talking about is going to be very different. The development path for the leaders is going to be very different today. Are we, like I mentioned earlier also, are we having focused training programs? How does this happen? Do they understand what is empowerment? When they start, demonstrating this, in turn, there will be autonomy in the team members also to be able to kind of, do this. Coaching has become very important. It's very, very undermined, honestly, today, Sasi. But coaching is extremely, extremely important when you're talking about and dealing with this kind of empowerment and change today. Engagement is a completely different high, where leaders today are struggling in hybrid work environments on how do you do. So, but in day-to-day operations today, if you really look at it, with feedback processes, one-on-one sessions, involving them in goal setting, even that is engagement. Engagement is not just about party and going and, having a get together. It is far beyond that. And that's how you're, weaving in your leadership style, trickling it down into the fabric of the organization, and also demonstrating it in terms of your behavior. So there's this much, when it comes to leadership, it also is talking to them about career paths. It is about how are you creating succession planning? How are you nurturing those leaders who are empowered and will take on those roles and then pass it on really to the team? And are you creating that pipeline within the organization today? Because leadership is not just one layer.
Layers. Yep.
There are multiple layers today, and that's when you start looking at it like that, you're actually creating empowered leaders, right from, let's say, mid-junior management till the top. So I think I'll just pause here, and in case there are more questions or further points on this one.
No, sure. I like the point where you said you drew a parallel between actual learning programs and coaching, right? The more I'm seeing across, though the industry of leadership learning is increasing 10% YOY, I think it'll hit 21 billion if I'm not wrong, the last time I checked, by 27. But coaching seems to be the emerging need because it's very customized and very one-to-one. Thanks for calling that piece out. Soumya, I'd like to come back to you. That question has still been lingering on my mind, what you said around the D&I practices, number one. Number two, unique to the industry that you operate in. How do you see this really spanning out? Empowerment as a topic when it comes to goal setting, performance, etc. Yeah.
So, Sasi, I would like also to take a little liberty on, you had asked about certain literature that people can read.
Yes.
And as Indians, we are fixated on the foreign literature. But if you go and if you read Gita, that's immensely empowering if you read through each of the slokas. If you go and read Upanishads, and I am going through my own spiritual journey, and I'm seeing that. And once an individual is spiritually empowered within, then you are devoid of snatching things that belong to the others. And and if that thought line comes in an individual operating in a corporate environment, when you tend to become a giver, that is something that also is very empowering to self, and then you pass on the power to the others. Now, coming to the D&I initiatives, for an industry which is 80% dominated by blue-collar workforce, getting people of a third gender or people who are non-gender conformists, sitting on those benches with people who have been brought up with certain ideologies, calling them all sorts of names, the gays, the lesbians, and various orientations. There are 24 sexual identities that we know today. So when you have that, what we did as management is that we went back to these blue-collar people. We asked them, and they said yes. Then we had a whole program where we called an NGO. There was an actress who enacted the whole, so we sensitized the entire system towards this. And then it started with these, the gender fluidity coming in the system. But it did not stop there. Now we have people or we have individuals and employees, our colleagues, who are prostitutes, who were prostitutes. They are working with us. Their identities are not known except to me and my recruitment head. To the others, so we're giving them that blanket of anonymity, giving them that power back, that they should be treated with equality in the system. We have people who come with criminal records, and they are part of our system. Now, this is where I think when a system allows people from various, stratas of the society to come and intermingle, it not only empowers them, it empowers the system and empowers us as well. So this is how the whole mix is now turning out to be. We've got people with special abilities sitting with us. We did not ask them to learn our language. We learned theirs, so that the ease of communication happens with them. And that is super empowering in the system. And all this is something that we have learned through our own developed tries and misses and hits and misses that we've done in the system. Because as of now, we have not come across any system or any tool which is absolute for anything. Nothing is tailor-made for a particular system. You go through n amount of trainings, you go through n amount of coachings, but biases are something which are very difficult to eradicate from any mindset. And with a biased mindset, you cannot create empowerment. So we've learned to agree to disagree respectfully. And that is also something which we are seeing in the board. Earlier, it was free for all. It was like a parliament thing. But today, we are giving that respect. We're giving respect to the voices. You and me don't need to agree on the same thing, but I respect your opinion is something that is now inculcated in the system, and people are doing it. Another thing that I've seen is that, we love to romance the word, empowerment. We all romance it, but then we love to micromanage. So at one point in time, we say, you don't even need to apply for the leave. And you can absolutely say, I don't feel like coming to work today. But then you'll say, you know what? That person didn't come to work because of and the whole ecosystem will be set abuzz with a lot of things. But that's not empowering. You're encroaching on someone's privacy. And when that kind of mindset comes, if this is just like Harini in the very start said, is it a fad or is it a required thing? Then it becomes a fad. You're just there for the glamour of romancing it. It's just a 3-hour movie. We romance the idea and we're back to where we were. So if for anything to be sustainable, you really need to walk the talk and be there. And let mistakes happen in the ecosystem. So one of my friends was employed with Henkel in Singapore. And his boss over there, so he made some errors, and the boss said, and he was, of course, he was a new trainee just out of the B school, and he was trembling, first job, what will my boss say? And the boss was a German and looked at him and smiled, this time you made X amount of mistake, but I know that you will forever be with this and not make many more mistakes. When I came into the gems and jewelry industry, believe you me, for me, carrot was just a vegetable. Then I came to know, carrot is for diamond, and that is with CT, and carrot is for gold, which is KT. And I came from the rubber industry, where in 3 decimals, we would, our post decimal, if there were 3 digits, we would joyfully round it off. Here, I bled the system, I don't know how many million of dollars. because I was doing pricing wrong. But my MD and all of these people, I'll be with them for close to 20 years in the same organization, but they never said, why the hell did you do this? In fact, when they realized why I'm doing it, they all said, oh, it's something that we needed to, make you understand and walk that mile extra. So the leader should be ready to do the handholding and walk with you in your journey of empowerment. Because I feel that everyone has got a beautiful mind. If that mind can create a nuclear energy, it is that mind that can either light up a whole city or destroy. It is how you use and harness that power. So I think that is what I would like to say.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Lovely. Very, very specific insights, which I think we'll find only in few industries, but very helpful there. Peterson, I see you. Are we hard on time? I do have one question I'm really dying to ask Harini right now. So,
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, great. Okay. Harini, we have heard about the case for it, the examples, how people are doing, etc., etc. Okay, fantastic. Now, the moment I, as a consultant, look into an organization, start interacting with people, know the culture, what diagnostics should I be doing to assess or metricize where is this culture on the journey of empowerment? How do I know and what metrics to really measure oneself on?
Believe it or not, measuring culture is just by looking at behaviors is a big no. You get nothing out of it because it's very easy to fudge those surveys. You get absolutely nothing. One way to make an assessment of where the culture is, or get a pulse of how it is in an organization, the best way is to be a fly on the wall and look at how work is delegated, how meetings are conducted, how is the dynamics in a room when there is a meeting on, who's speaking the most, who's speaking the least, and you look at how work is measured, how it is monitored. All those things give a good feel of, is there a culture of empowerment in the organization? That is with respect to, it's like a pulse diagnostic. Of course, there are several surveys which you can run as well, but these things do help a lot. Mere observation itself helps a lot. Because I've heard of organizations where people say, yes, we have an open door culture. The door is always open, but knock before you enter, right? And that's quite an irony. It makes no sense. But when you walk into a room, a meeting is in progress, and just observe who's talking the most, who's talking the least, and how is somebody, facilitating the meeting so that the person who's talking the least is able to contribute. All of that talks great deals about the culture. Now, coming to very clear metrics of how do you measure the culture, whether the culture has transformed or not, or how do you even measure the culture in form of metrics? We believe, and I'm absolutely convinced after several dozens of clients that we have worked with, we consistently believe, and we have seen several case studies, and probably every case is that look at your business outcomes. Okay, you look at where you start from, whatever is the definition of success for your business, whatever are your KPIs. Look at those and see how that is moving. If that is trending positively, then you know that you have the right kind of culture. Obviously, the positive trend, if the trend is really, really positive and it's moving really fast upwards, you know that the empowerment is higher. Because lower the empowerment, slower would be that trend. So I think keeping an eye on the business outcome is the best and the easiest way, and it's a sure short way. And when you're transparent about the business outcome to the people, and it also becomes a self-fueling mechanism. The moment people see that, I've been able to take decisions, the business is growing, and that's a motivator for me to take better business decisions. So that becomes a self-fueling mechanism, which helps sustain the kind of culture that we're actually trying to drive in an organization. Yeah, I wanted to keep it really very brief because I'm really keen on taking a few questions from the audience.
Okay, sure thing. So wonderful. So far, I don't see any questions yet from the audience, but everyone on the call, please feel free to post. Now is the chance. Otherwise, I'll rob off all your time as well. Okay, that's the disclaimer I have. But in the meantime, until we get a question, one open-ended question for everybody, right? If there is one tip that you would give to say, go implement right after you disconnect the call, so that you are an advocate and you're actually living the culture of empowerment, what would that action be for a professional in an organization?
I can go first. I think the best way and the easiest way and something that everybody on the call can go back and implement is treat adults as adults. So the next time you have to get something done from a team member, don't give instructions. Tell them what's the outcome that you want to achieve, and then let them find their way to get that. So that's simply treating adults as adults, moving away from a parent-child syndrome to adult.
Powerful. Okay, sure.
I think the way I look at it is very simple. And I think I've always believed, it's the simplest of things when you do is when you get the best of and the biggest of results. Do we even talk about it? Communication. The very fact, let it not be implicit. Sometimes it's important to talk about it. How much are we talking? What is the openness in that culture? That we are even discussing these kind of things. Everything I feel, and what I have seen in multiple organizations without naming any, is it is supposed to be very implicit, assuming that things will happen and are happening. I have done this. This is empowerment. What is that education related with it? How many understand it as a concept?
Got it. Fair thing. Start with the absolute basics. Okay, cool. We have a question from the audience, but Soumya, after you.
Yeah. So I would say that once there is a project or anything that the team is working on, please stop preempting the outcome. The moment we start preempting the outcome, or we want the outcome to happen in a certain way, we start micromanaging, and out goes the empowerment. So stop micromanagement right now, empower people enough, and stop, preempting that this should be the outcome. It may not come the way that you wanted it, and that's what the whole project is all about. So be okay to fail and be okay to learn from those, not to repeat those things again. So 3 things.
Okay, lovely. Sure. Okay, we have two questions. Peter, what do you suggest? We want to do the poll first?
Yes, in fact, what an interesting session, like with great insights. So it would be great to capture this feedback. So let's run the poll right now before we take further questions. Let's quickly have the poll. Would request all to kindly share your feedback on our today's session.
Okay, 7 done. Folks, please do punch in.
Another 30 seconds. Would request all to please share your feedback so that we can continue with the audience questions.
Right. Either way, I'll just read out one of the questions on the chat.
Yes, please.
And open to anybody in the panel to really take this. How does the size of an organization influence the implementation of empowering managed strategies? I think we just touched upon it. We didn't dwell into it deeper, but that's a good question. That's one of the questions. The other one is, in what ways can empowering management practices impact employees' retention rates? Fair questions.
Yeah, I can take the first one on the size of the organization. So obviously, we're talking of organization structure itself being a barrier for empowerment. So it goes without saying that organization designs need to be relooked. When you're relooking organization designs, it's super important for us to be conscious of this statement in a lighter vein, which actually Ricardo said, is that if you build pyramids, you get monkeys, right? So typical traditional organization structures, they have levels in the pyramids, which actually, so as the organization is scaling up, you will notice that the levels keep increasing, and with every increase in level, there is a justification for that level, and that's where bureaucracy creeps in. So empowerment and bureaucracy cannot coexist. They are completely different things. They're absolute opposites. So definitely large organizations that have very, very tall structures are a barrier to empowerment. So within that, what do you do? How do you convert them? Is convert them into smaller enterprises within enterprises. There's a beautiful HBR case study of Hire, the white goods manufacturer, which talks about a 40,000 people strong company having 4,000 enterprises within it. So obviously, that's the size of the organization. If it is large, then break it into smaller chunks where communication between people working towards an outcome for a client or adding value to a client increases. And obviously, when the size is small, it behaves like a startup within a larger organization. So empowerment, if you're trying to do it in a traditional organizational structure, which itself is a barrier, then it's like breaking your head against a hard wall. So it's super important for us to break down large organizations into smaller, meaningful, smaller entities within the organization, but working with a shared purpose.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, super. Great, thank you. Second question, would someone want to take this one? In what ways
I can take up the second question. So, so what I have seen, Sasi, is that when you have a management that is empowering, of course, the level of satisfaction of the employees, in the organization goes way up. So we have seen, certain cases where people have come to us and said, ma'am, people walk up to us, to the HRs and to their departmental head, and they say that, we want to go for a certain interviews. Imagine an employee walking up to you saying that, hey, have applied in XYZ organization, I want to go for an interview. And we let them go, we let them explore. And they come back and they say, there was something which was missing. And we asked this person specifically, what was it? And they said, ma'am, the way that the manager just looked at the office boy when he kept the tray was very demeaning. And if that is something that is happening, ma'am, then I don't think so that's the right place that I want to be. And that is something that really touched the core with all of us. That means that the lack of respect also is something that people are looking at, are feeling. And an empowered thing is giving or treating, that's what we do in our organization, that jobs are just jobs. Someone would be doing a job at a higher echelon, someone would be doing or executing a task at a lower echelon, but at the end of the day, we all are employees of the same structure. So yes, engagement would give a higher level of satisfaction. Then even the money, the magic of money would not pull people out of your ecosystem. So that is something that I would rest it with.
Yeah, I'll just add, I'd just like to add something to this. And this has been a very important topic of conversation, really, empowerment and retention, because I think the question was more about, how does, the retention piece kind of happens along with this, if I kind of understood it correctly.
Correct, that's the question.
So, and I agree, retention today, there are enough and more researchers which have shown is got not to do anything with money. So what is happening is, number one, organizations are not talking enough about what your career opportunities are. What are the different paths you can take? And paths, if I may want to add on, is not just vertical, it can be horizontal also. Are organizations doing enough of that? That is also empowerment. That you don't look at just moving up the ladder like this, there is a ladder like that as well. And that's a very important aspect that organizations are missing today. And this is a big piece of empowerment, honestly speaking, which kind of comes in. The second aspect is in terms of feedback and continuous improvement. Are we having an empowered culture where the employees feel they can come and open, like an example that we just got from Soumya, somebody came and spoke about it. How many times employees come? They just quick. What happens in most cases is suddenly you receive a resignation. Nobody's discussed it. The least we try all our systems, this person is in amber, in green, in red, and all of that stuff. Those mechanisms don't work. And the best of the people leave because of lack of openness, being able to talk. And if they are giving suggestions, are we implementing it and going back to them, asking more about it? Are we involving them, empowering them enough that, okay, this is a suggestion that has come from you. Why don't you pick it up? Why don't you run with it? The 5x25 program, for example, that I was talking about, where we had teams across the world, we made it happen by creating different groups based on different time zones. And the choice was given to the employees, which ones do they want to pick up? Would somebody sitting in India want to join EMEA or Americas or Australia, depending on what works for them?
Makes sense. Super. Love it. The whole narrative of taking retention beyond comp to the intangibles, right? I think that came out really well in pretty much all of your conversation. I mean, I have made a summary. Given the interest of time, I wouldn't be summarizing this net, but I personally enjoyed a lot in this conversation and gained too. Thank you so very much. Audience, I hope the questions are answered. Anything more, feel free to connect with our panelist. HRII, once again, wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much. Peterson, back to you in case you have any words.
Thank you, Sasi, for taking us through this session and making it interactive and exciting. Thank you, Dr. Soumya, Ms. Kanika, and Ms. Harini for sharing your valuable thoughts and insights with us. It has been a privilege having you all for this great session. To all those who wish to learn and grow, you can access the recording of our today's session on your YouTube link shared in the chat window. Before we conclude with today's session, we would also want to thank all the event partners, Geisha, NASSCOM COE, Talgrow, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local Ahmedabad, and India for supporting HRAI's event. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the link provided in the chat window. Do join us for our next session on Connecting the Dots on the 16th of November, 2023 on the topic, Mental Well-Being at Workplace. That's it from us today. See you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take good care.
Bye-bye. Happy Diwali.
Aapko bhi.
Yeah, to all.
Happy Diwali to all.
To all, yeah. Thank you, Shyam. We can hereby conclude with our today's session.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali.